Hey, did you know that the device you're trusting to track your blood sugar might be lying to you by a dangerous margin? I've got the scars, literal ones, to prove I went all in to test these gadgets myself. And what I found about over-the-counter versus medical-grade continuous glucose monitors, or CGMs, will make you rethink everything. Let's dive deeper with a question that hit me hard while I was patching up a bleeding arm after one of these tests. How can I trust it to keep me or anyone safe during a blood sugar crisis? I'm talking about the kind of crisis where every minute counts, where a wrong reading could mean the difference between a quick fix and a hospital trip. I tested multiple devices. Some you can grab off a shelf, others you need a prescription for, and watched how they behaved under real pressure. One of them, an over-the-counter model, didn't even last 72 hours before it just gave up on me. I had it stuck to my arm, waiting for it to sync, only to wake up the next morning to a dead sensor. No warning, no data. Just a useless piece of plastic. Meanwhile, others kept chugging along for days, tracking every spike and dip. That inconsistency isn't just annoying, it's a gamble with your health. And here's the kicker: size and design matter more than you'd think. The failed device, it was clunky, 3 times bigger than the others, sticking out like a sore thumb. Compare that to the sleeker ones, barely noticeable, blending into my daily grind. I couldn't help but wonder, are manufacturers cutting corners on over-the-counter options, betting we won't notice? Or is this just the price of accessibility? I've seen patients in desperate need of affordable monitoring. But if it's unreliable, are we really helping them? Let's unpack this mess, because I've got numbers, mishaps, and raw insights to share from putting my own skin in the game. First, let's lay the groundwork on what CGMs are and why this test even matters. These little gadgets are lifesavers for anyone managing blood sugar. Think diabetics, pre-diabetics, or even folks just curious about their metabolic health. They stick to your skin, usually on your arm or abdomen, with a tiny sensor that reads glucose levels in your interstitial fluid every few minutes. No more finger pricks every hour if you've got one of these. Ideal. The medical grade ones often need a doctor's script, tailored for precision in clinical settings, while over-the-counter versions are marketed for the average Joe wanting to keep tabs without jumping through hoops. But accuracy and reliability, that's where the battle lines are drawn. I wanted hard proof on which ones deliver. So I lined up several devices, both types, and turned myself into a human pincushion. Picture this: 4 sensors dotting my arms, each one applied with a snap or a press. Some with needles so subtle you barely flinch, others feeling like a clumsy jab. I've been around medical tech long enough to know that no device is perfect, but the stakes here are personal. I've had patients break down in my office, terrified of a hypo they didn't catch in time because their monitor lagged. So I spiked my own blood sugar. Yes, I binged on a stack of muffins, the kind loaded with sugar that make any nutritionist cringe, just to see how each device reacted in real time. I paired that with old-school finger-stick tests, the gold standard for accuracy, to benchmark the readings. The setup wasn't just a stunt. It was a mirror of what millions go through daily, trying to trust tech with their lives. Beyond the numbers, I tracked durability, how long these things last before they conk out, and usability, like how easy they are to slap on when your hands are shaky from a load. I've seen too many folks struggle with fiddly designs, especially older patients whose dexterity isn't what it used to be. And let's not ignore cost. Over-the-counter should mean affordable, but if it's trash, you're just throwing money away. My goal was clear: strip away the marketing hype and get to the raw truth. Could the accessible options hold their own against the heavy hitters? I've got stories from my own body and data from my own blood to show you. Now, let's throw a curveball into this. Why do some devices seem to play it safe by showing lower readings than reality when your blood sugar dips? This isn't just a quirk. It's a deliberate design choice that blew my mind when I dug into it, and it's got huge implications. During my test, after those muffins sent my glucose climbing, I waited for a natural drop to see how the devices handled the low edge. Sure enough, both medical grade and over-the-counter models reported numbers a tad lower than my fingerstick test when I was hovering around what should have been a concerning range. Think 50 or 60. My fingerstick, a trusty backup I've relied on for years, clocked me at 90, a safer zone. At first, I was annoyed. Why the discrepancy? Then it hit me after cross-checking with clinical studies and recalling countless patient charts. Manufacturers often build in a buffer to err on the side of caution. False positives for low blood sugar are better than missing a real hypo. To alarm you into eating a snack, then let you crash without warning. I've had folks tell me, "Doc, my device said I was at 50, but I felt fine." 9 times out of 10, a quick check proved they weren't as low as feared. But that alarm saved the one time they were. It's a safety net woven into the tech. And while it's not perfect, sometimes causing unnecessary panic, it's a calculated trade-off. But here's where it gets dicey. Not all devices handle this with the same finesse. Some over-the-counter ones I tested were wildly inconsistent, swinging from overly cautious to missing spikes entirely, while their medical-grade counterparts seemed tighter in their calibration. And that dead sensor I mentioned earlier, it didn't even get the chance to lie to me. It just quit. Imagine relying on that in the middle of the night when you're groggy and vulnerable. This isn't just about numbers on a screen. It's about trust when you're at your weakest. How do you balance accessibility with precision? I've wrestled with this while advising patients who can't afford the pricier options, but still need something they can lean on. The tech isn't just a gadget, it's a lifeline. And these quirks shape whether it holds or snaps. Here's where it all comes to a head with the raw, unfiltered results from my experiment. And trust me, the numbers don't lie, even if the devices sometimes do. Post-muffin binge, my blood sugar should have shot through the roof, and I was ready to compare every reading down to the decimal. I synced up all the sensors, waited for them to settle. Some take 30 minutes to an hour to calibrate, and then checked them against a finger stick test, the kind I've done thousands of times in exam rooms and at home. One over-the-counter device read 120, another of its kind hit 119, while a medical-grade one logged 125. My finger stick? A rock-solid 117. That's tight. Closer than I expected across the board. Honestly, I was half braced for wild swings, given the horror stories I've heard from folks swearing their monitors are off by 30 or 40 points. But here's the real test. Consistency over time. I wore these things for days, pushing through my routine, meals, workouts, even stress spikes from a packed schedule. The medical grade option and one over-the-counter standout held strong, tracking every fluctuation with readings that stayed within a 5 to 10 point range of my manual checks. Duration-wise, they lasted their promised 10 to 15 days, some even hinting at potential for longer, with a little know-how I might share later. But the other over-the-counter device, it didn't just fail early. It was a brick by day 3, leaving me blind to my levels at a critical moment. I remember standing in my kitchen, staring at a blank app screen, feeling this mix of frustration and dread. Because if I were a patient less attuned to my body, that silence could have been disastrous. And let's talk real-world impact. I think of a guy I've worked with, mid-50s, juggling a job and family, who can't afford constant doctor visits. He grabbed an over-the-counter monitor for convenience, but when it lagged on a high reading, he didn't catch a spike until he was dizzy at work. Compare that to another case, a woman using a medical-grade device under guidance, who got alerts in time to adjust her insulin before a family event turned into an ER visit. The data from my test mirrors these stakes. Accuracy is there across most devices when they work, but reliability, staying alive and alert, isn't guaranteed with the cheaper picks. Add in usability, and it's a mixed bag. Applying them was a breeze for some. Snap, stick, done, while others had me fumbling with outdated designs, lining up parts like a puzzle under pressure. I've seen patients give up on tech altogether because the learning curve felt like a mountain. So, what's the verdict? Most of these tools pass the accuracy test in a pinch, but when it comes to who's got your back day after day, the medical-grade options and one over-the-counter winner, edged out with durability and trust. This isn't just a lab report. It's a window into what you're signing up for when you stick one of these on and hope for the best. Now let's lighten the load a bit, because if I'm honest, sticking myself with 4 sensors in one go had me looking like a cyborg and feeling like a klutz. I thought I'd seen it all, but halfway through applying one of these things, I'm pressing down, expecting a tiny pinch, and suddenly, bam! Blood's trickling down my arm. I'm staring at it, half laughing, half panicking, thinking, do I need a transfusion now, or what? It wasn't even painful, just a shock, like hitting a rogue vein by sheer bad luck. I held pressure on it, muttering to myself about how this better be worth the data, while the other devices just sat there, smug and bloodless. It's funny now, but in the moment, I felt like a walking cautionary tale. And here's the wild part. Most of these applications didn't hurt a bit. You see that needle, you brace for a sting, but it's over before you can blink. I've had folks tell me they're terrified to even try a CGM because it looks like a torture device. And I get it. Those little applicators can seem menacing. But after doing this round, I can say it's more mind game than actual pain. I remember one late night, sitting with a patient who was shaking, just holding the box. Convinced it'd be agony, I walked them through it, step by step. And when they pressed that button, their face went from dread to disbelief. "That's it?" they said, almost disappointed there wasn't more drama. It's moments like that, and my own clumsy bleed out, that remind me how much of this journey is about busting myths and fears. Sure, I've got a tiny battle scar from this experiment, but it's a badge of honor for getting down and dirty with the tech, so others don't have to guess. And let's not forget the absurdity of walking around with multiple sensors stuck to me. I caught my reflection and thought, man, I'm one bad wire away from being a sci-fi experiment. It's a laugh, but it's also real. We're putting so much faith in these little machines, and sometimes they've got a mind of their own. Whether it's a surprise bleed or a device that just won't die, there's a human story behind every beep and buzz, and I'm here for all of it. So to wrap this up, here's the straight talk. Most CGMs, whether over-the-counter or medical grade, can nail accuracy when they're on their game. Readings within a few points of a fingerstick test, close enough to guide you through a spike or dip. But reliability is the real divide. Some over-the-counter options flake out early or lag in design, while the sturdier picks, often medical grade or a standout accessible one, stick with you for the long haul, lasting their full 10 to 15 days and keeping you in the loop. If you're betting on these to manage your health, that durability isn't a luxury. It's I've laid out the numbers, the fails, and even the blood I spilled to get this truth. So you've got the full picture to choose wisely. If you want to keep hearing stories like this, raw and real, hit that like button and subscribe. It's the fuel that keeps me chatting. And hey, I'm dying to know, have you ever had a moment with a health gadget that totally threw you for a loop, good or bad? Drop it in the comments. I'm all ears for your tales.